last year, for the Film Summit, we started talking about our new purpose, mission, and vision. And if you read those as one complete statement, it says, the Greater Columbus Film Commission is here to enrich our community through the art and business of film by convening and empowering individuals, organizations, and businesses in the spirit of collaboration, so that Columbus is recognized as a top city for film education, exhibition, and production, and film is recognized as an art form that has a measurable impact on the economy, individuals, and community. So I just want to say, just keep reminding ourselves of that as we talk about the film industry and what we're trying to do. So building on those three pillars of education, exhibition, and production, we are building what we feel is a truly unique film community and industry here in Columbus. We are creating programs and growing resources where next century film can thrive. For example, some of the things we're working on, we are in the process of doing a Film It in C-Bus crew card. When visiting productions come to town, each member of the crew will get a card. It's good for discounts on restaurants and rentals and transportation. So we're excited about that. And we're constantly working on adding new partners to the crew card, so that should be rolled out in the next month or so. This summer, we are also going to do our script writing contest for teens, and we're partnering with the Columbus Public Library. And we did this a few years ago when I was working at Vital with Jason Clayton, who's here somewhere. I don't know where Jason is. Oh, up there in the dark where you can't see. See, Gateway's up here, Vital's always in the back. Well, it always is. So through the library's teen programs, we invite teens to write a 3 to 5 page script, and they will be judged by industry professionals. The winner of the contest has their film actually produced, and Vital has stepped up, and they're going to do that this year for us. So we think it's an exciting program. We did it a couple years ago. Also, Scott Spears, who's back recording today, Scott has volunteered to hold a couple workshops at the library to teach teens the basics of script writing and formatting. But we did this a few years ago, again, when I was at Vital, and a 15-year-old at the time, Hillary Hurdle, did it, and she won the contest that year, and we produced her film. And Hillary's here, and I just wanted her to come up so we can recognize her and then have her say a few words about how the experience has helped her grow and what she's doing today. So Hillary, if you want to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just talk about your experience a little bit and what you're up to now and how that experience has led to what you're doing.
Well, the experience winning the script writing program was kind of eye-opening, and being a teenager, you're always kind of stuck in that teenage angst that no one wants to listen to you. So it was always surprising, really, to find out that John and the crew at Vital really liked my film enough and listened to what I say in the film to produce it. It actually ignited more of my passion for writing. I kind of kept it to myself a lot. I was kind of shy about it. I've had, since then, an audio drama produced. I work on the communications for the Sierra Club of Central Ohio, so all their writing and their video production work, and I do a lot of small projects myself, and this was a great start to just keep going forward with a passion of mine.
Great. So how old? You were 15 when you won the contest?
Yeah.
You said it was like 9 or 10 years ago? Jason, is that
About-
right? Was it that long ago?
About 8, yeah.
8 years ago, so time flies. But thank you very much, Hillary. I'm glad you had a great experience, and I think nurturing young filmmakers like that is really important in what we're doing. So thank you very much. Some of the other things we're working on, we're in the beginning stages of partnering with some established organizations around town and possibly creating a film fund, which we're really excited about. Ohio Film Group is also, I don't know if some of you read in the paper, I think last week, Ohio Film Group is starting a financing division. So they'll be here a little later to answer some questions. I know, I think Nick from OFG is here. I think he's the only one who's here right now. But Lyn and Chad will be here later to talk about that. So that's really exciting. We're beginning to work closer with the Mid-Ohio Filmmakers Association. Mike Butcher up there, who helps run MOFA, and Scott. We're excited to be working with them to introduce budding filmmakers to the process and hone their craft. So we've created 3 specific goals for Film Columbus. Number 1, create a unifying vision that positions Columbus as a leader in film exhibition, production, and education to inform strategy accompanying tactics for the next 5 years. Rally city stakeholders behind a shared direction for the benefit of all of those stakeholders. And position film as a recognized art form and a viable industry here in Columbus. Progress, it takes time. I've been here for two and a half years. So we're making some good strides, but it takes time. And I think with some patience and perseverance, and all of us contributing to building the industry, creating jobs, and we will continue to grow the film community. So we have quite a bit to talk about. After the summit, you are welcome to stay. We're doing the opening film for Focal, the Film Festival of Columbus. The film tonight is The Bad Batch. The production designer from that film will be here. He'll be here about 5 o'clock today, I think. So you can pick his brain a little bit about that film. It doesn't come out, it's not released until, what, next week? 2 weeks? Okay, so you get to see it here first. So you're welcome to stay for that. Tickets will be available, so I encourage you to stick around. I'd like to turn it over to the Film Columbus Board President and President of Gateway Film Center, Chris Hamill. Thank you, Chris.
Hi. I have like the easiest job of everybody today. But I want to say first, John, that's a lot of exciting stuff. Hopefully you guys feel like, oh wow, hi. Hopefully you guys feel like those are things that will make all of our lives and working in the film community better in Columbus. So the first job I have today is to talk about the purpose of the Film Summit. This is our 3rd Film Summit, and as John alluded to, we are trying to create a moment where people who work in these 3 disciplines of film, education, exhibition, and production, could sit in the room together, hear about what's going on in those other disciplines, maybe make new friends, find ways to collaborate, and most importantly, just get to talk to one another. I think we all identified that prior to this event, there was a lot of people in silos. So hopefully this helps us all get a little bit closer together. The second, I mentioned making friends. My second job this morning or this afternoon is to introduce our keynote speaker, who is a friend of mine, and that is Stephine Silverman from the Belcourt in Nashville. Now, Stephine is the executive director of the Belcourt. I think you're now going with the Film Center of Nashville, right? Nashville's nonprofit film center. I've had the privilege to hear Stephine speak several times. I'm going to make her feel pretty nervous. It's pretty awesome. In addition to being at the Belcourt, she's also the vice president of the board of the National Historic Theaters. That thing Stephine said, which she'll say in a minute. And Stephine completed a $5 million renovation of her facility in 2016, and hopefully you'll tell us how you did that. So without further ado, please welcome our keynote speaker, Stephine Silverman.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. This is my first trip to Columbus, which is weird because I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I live in Nashville. I feel like I've been floating around Columbus my entire life, but I'm really thrilled to be here. So thank you, Chris, for having me. We are big fans of the Gateway Film Center and its phenomenal team, and really see them as some of our favorite colleagues in the nation. So that makes me happy to be here. Also, we have Jenny's Ice Cream right up the street from my theater, so I feel like that bonds us as well. And in truth, there's a lot of symmetry between Columbus and Nashville. Chris and I were talking about how our 2 cities seem to keep swapping places on national lists of best place to live, best place to visit, best place to settle with a dog. It's all options are on the table, but Columbus and Nashville keep kind of living there neck and neck. And I think the thing that's really true about both of our cities is that They're communities that feel engaged in the world, communities that care about the cultural landscape, as well as its economic landscape. And in my mind, the best communities are those that understand a vital, thriving cultural community drives the economic growth in vital and fundamental ways. In Nashville, the power of culture is both taken for granted and also over-allocated to the commercial country music business. And while the country music business is clearly important to Nashville, the music business has been in the city for decades, behaving in very specific ways, year over year. It's only been in the last several years, as musicians have pushed against those old borders to create a broader base, as artisans and makers have identified Nashville as a place to root and grow a business, as fashion industry sprouts, a food scene explodes, and a filmmaking community finally begins to have enough work to grow, that the city itself begins to truly become more than honky-tonks and nudie suits. All those steps also fostered the community our sweet little Belcourt needed to begin to get its legs under it, to stabilize and thrive, and at long last raise the millions of dollars we needed to renovate and preserve it. The Belcourt first opened in 1925 as a lovely but totally unremarkable neighborhood theater with plans to be in the movie business. On opening day, the local paper called it Nashville's Independent Theater. But even then, that was a tough position to be in. The theater was quickly shut out of the movie business by another exhibitor who opened a theater literally around the corner. So it spent several years as a community theater, a children's theater, and even historically for Nashville, as the first stage of the Grand Ole Opry in the mid-1930s. Eventually, a second theater was added, and the Belcourt became the earliest twinned theater in Nashville. It was operated for years by the commercial Carmike Company, but still with an eye toward films that pushed boundaries and crossed borders. Older Nashvillians love to tell me stories about how they saw their first R-rated movie at the Belcourt, and particularly about how long the lines were around the building when we were the only theater in town screening The Last Tango in Paris. Those were the headiest days, really, our theater had seen in decades and would honestly see for decades. And despite the fact that we're in the middle of a vibrant neighborhood within blocks of major universities. Carmike left the building in the late 1980s as the Cineplex began to rule the movie world, and like independent theaters across the country, the Belcourt was truly adrift in a sea of changing times and changing tastes. We managed to survive, saved by a community who stood up and protected us when things looked bleak, and audiences who drifted our way slowly but surely. But in many ways, we are all, again, in a sea of changing times and changing tastes. Never before have we had to have a conversation about what counts as a movie. Are straight-to-the-home screen movies still movies in the classic sense? Should a 5-part miniseries that screened in 2 cities in 2 theaters, but in truth lived its life on a great sports television network, be nominated for, much less win, the Documentary Academy Award? What counts, and also, does it truly matter? I have personal opinions, certainly, and many of these issues directly affect my theater, but when I take a step back and think about how change can certainly defeat, but also redefine something important, I want movies and the broad and rich community around them to land on the positive side of that problem. This, to me, is where the top-down, nationwide approach to the film business, in part, is missing the mark. I think it's a unique time for new centers to emerge and for communities across this country to play a larger role. It's time for creative hub cities like both of ours to build on the energy and excitement around us and evolve the way films are made and exhibited. Cities and the venues and artists it supports are key. Nashville's newfound vitality is happening not because it kept doing the thing it was most well known for, and in fact, the commercial music business tried to shut out the change that was right in front of it, and they've paid a very steep price for doing it. It's because, despite some amount of wanting to stay the same, a large enough group of people decided to push on the boundaries, to put a stake in the ground knowing that the foundation was strong in Nashville, powerful history, good civic leadership, and an openness to growth that we could begin to redefine as a city. The same thing is happening in the art house independent theater world. The numbers don't lie, but we're not talking sweeping national box office numbers, though if you think of a film like Moon Knight, we get there over time. We're talking community by community audience building. Yes, box office numbers in the commercial world are in decline to some extent, But that's not the story for the Belcourt. It's not the story for our art house peers across the country, or right here in Columbus, it's not the story for theaters like the Gateway. We have seen year-over-year audience growth for a decade now. We see new audiences, not just for new releases from the many major distributors, but also for smaller independent and repertory films. Audiences come out for high-quality, thoughtful, compelling filmmaking. And an example that always comes to my mind is a couple of years ago we showed Badlands. And I remember standing in the lobby with 5 of our stalwart film supporters who've been there since the day we reopened, who had last watched Badlands with only the 5 of them in a 300-seat theater. And here we were, 6, 8 years later, and there were 200 people in line to see Badlands. And why is that? It's not because all of the sudden people instantly were dying to see Terrence Malick's 1973 film. It happens because a growing portion of a community wanted to do something differently. They're still going to see Star Wars, but not just Star Wars. And we are no longer assuming that people only want to see Star Wars. We have to be there also providing things differently. The single system, market from the top, and push it out to flyover country only works for specific kinds of films. You can't feed everything into the same marketing and distribution strategy and automatically have people show up. It's about partnerships. The artist makes the movie, the distribution world finds it a home, and the home has to go find the audience. For my money, the home's the theater, ideally. But there are others, but it's still the home's job because they know the community, and more importantly, know who to talk to build the new audience that particular piece of work calls for. That strategy is made possible through broad, collaborative, on-the-ground networks and is one of the unique powers of a multiple creative hub city strategy. If we break things down into manageable segments, I think we'll feel less overwhelmed by the explosion of options, both distracting and engaging our audiences. We all listen to music in symphony halls, at clubs, and through earbuds. We eat out and cook in our kitchens. We even watch movies on big screens and small screens. There is vitality in the mix, and maybe we can blame short attention spans or the multitude of options for some of the volatility, but maybe it's also simply that the new will keep coming. But the more new there is, the more the old exists, and we still value that old. Over time, we certainly begin to consume or interact with it differently, but I think in many cases, we do learn to cherish it more. I think all of us in the business of exhibiting films are constantly asked the question, will the movie theater survive? Netflix's Ted Sarandos recently spoke to a conference telling them how he has no reason to go to the theater now because he can stay at home with his big screen and presumably his Netflix subscription. He's not wrong, really. He doesn't have to go. Nobody has to go. It's no longer the movie theater that's the only place you can see stories on a screen, but it hasn't been in decades. It is, though, one of those special spots in our modern world where, alone or in a group, you can have an authentic shared experience in a place whose mission is hopefully to be a home for humans to gather and connect with great filmmaking and each other in a warm communal space. Where communities invest in the continued importance of shared experience in events like this summit, in the Columbus Film Festival, in venues like the Gateway, the Drexel, the Wexner, when communities keep the artists they've raised and trained, like Hillary, by fostering a vibrant place that encourages creation, they are simply better. Better at attracting new residents, better at attracting new businesses, and better at keeping the current and converting the new to longtime residents and champions. It's good business for sure, but it brings something deeper than the transactional. It defines place in a way that's hard to articulate, but is known to its residents profoundly. Thank you.
See? How about one more round of applause for Stephanie Silverman? We'll now hear from Lyn Tolan from the Ohio Motion Picture Tax Credit. Lyn? Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm here representing David Goodman, who's the director of the Ohio Development Services Agency. And we are the agency that does economic development for the state of Ohio. So I'm going to kind of talk state perspective, but it's always hard to overlook the fact that we are here in Columbus, so it impacts us directly and every day. The Development Services Agency, well, first, a little bit about the role that I play. I spent 30 years in television and came to work for the state just under this current administration to help with policy and communications, and the motion picture is tax credit, and the work that we do in Tourism Ohio is something that I work with closely and near and dear to my heart. I want to tell you a little bit more broadly about what we do than just the motion picture tax credit, although that's one of our main functions as it relates to film. We have the motion picture tax credit, and that is a 30% rebate, if you will, on the work that's done in Ohio by the film industry. It's actually film, television, and video games, as it was written into the law. And the second important function that we do is through Tourism Ohio, we do a lot of promotion of events and reasons to come and make Ohio, any place and every place in Ohio really, a destination of choice. We just got our latest visitors numbers, and there are over 200 million visits to, in, and around Ohio every year. And people come for all sorts of reasons. The primary reason is to visit friends and family, but the second most important reason is to attend events and festivals. And so Tourism Ohio sees it as an important part of its mission in growing the economic development of the state to publicize, promote, not only the filmmaking that's happening here, but also the film festivals. And we have a lot of different vehicles that we use to do that. Much of it is free to any Ohio-based event. And so I encourage you, if you've got an event that's going on, to give us a call. And we will tell you what we can do for you and show you how you can get free listings and so on. And we even have a co-op program, if you have any dollars of your own, that we match 1-for-1 for certain promotional and marketing activities. This is really important for everything that Stephanie talked about, because we know that that people who come to Ohio, people who have never been to Ohio, they don't get it. But we have research that says that. But people who come to Ohio even once have such a great experience, make such a connection with their own people they come to see or people they bring with them, that they almost always come back more than once. So we know that it meets all of our goals in economic development in terms of growing jobs, growing communities, and growing individuals here in the state of Ohio. So the economic development is a really important factor in everything that we do, and so I always encourage people to look at it through that lens, because not only can Tourism Ohio provide opportunities for you to promote and market what you're doing, but in addition, the Development Services Agency invests we have the Historic Preservation Tax Credit. That is important to a lot of folks in the film industry, because we have dozens of historic independent theaters that we have helped to get new life, and they're spectacular. All over the state. And they've done some amazing things, whether it's at the King Arts Complex here or the Colony Theater in Marietta, and you don't have enough time for me to name them all. But they do fabulous work, and they've done some great things coming together so that they can be profitable and build on what they're doing. And so, we kind of we try to think that we kind of help to rebuild from the ground up and then promote everything that's going on, because this is, it's all about what's happening in those communities. And another phenomenon that I'm going to mention that we're seeing coming back in Ohio, and a lot of it's through the investment that's made by both the local communities and what the state is doing, is that downtowns are coming back. So anybody that's old enough knows that that there used to be town centers, and then town centers went away, and then you drive through some what used to be great towns all across America, but certainly in the Midwest, that had shops and activity and restaurants and fun, and people lived there and so on. The town centers went away, and now the town centers are coming back. And so we're finding that it's not only great for small community life, more and more people want to live near the center of things, and communities large and small, frankly, but also it is a great place for filming. So, in coming to Columbus, you'll see those little community centrals are growing back up again. But as I say, that's a phenomenon that we're seeing all across the state. So filmmakers are finding that very, very enticing. I want to make sure you know what we do, and then I'm going to get to the part, the punchline, which is really that there's a big year ahead for filmmakers in Ohio. We administer the motion picture, so we do all these great things to grow communities and grow jobs. But we administer this motion picture tax credit. We are among about 30 states that have a tax incentive program if you're making films. And I say about 30 because they're coming on and dropping off all the time. Michigan no longer has a tax credit. Florida is right now debating eliminating theirs. Connecticut has eliminated theirs. Ohio's has grown. I'm going to talk about that in a second. With the growth of the work that we have here, Kentucky looked over the border and said, hey, bring some to us, and theirs is growing. But our motion picture tax credit here in Ohio is among the simplest of the 30. It's important because major motion picture producers and executive producers have told us they won't even come if you don't have it. It's kind of the baseline. It's a part of the financing mix as they have worked with it, and so they won't even come without it. So it's important for states that want to be in this space that you have it. Our program here in Ohio is very simple. No lotteries like California. No funny caps or who comes first and how that goes. It is a first come, first served basis. This year, one of the new additions is we've moved our application online. So there are 100 million reasons to go to development.ohio.gov. But if you go /film office, you can see our, in the last, I'll say year and a half, we've rebuilt the page there to make it easier for folks, and a lot of the work that we do can be done online. If you scroll down that homepage, you'll see the state of Ohio, and you'll see all the film offices there. We support these local film offices like Columbus. And the reason that we do is because these are communities that have made a commitment to film. Columbus has said this is a space that we want to be in as part of our economic development plan. And so when it comes to a project coming to Ohio, we don't play favorites, we don't direct them, but we say these are the folks who've made the commitment, and they want to help you in your work. We administer the tax credit, but a lot of the other work that film producers ask for when they come is related to finding crew, finding locations, and so on. And we leave that to the experts in the local film offices who know their area, who've made the commitment for economic development, and so on. So for our part, producers apply online. If we have tax credits available, then we review those applications in a first-come, first-served basis. If we don't have tax credits available, they wait in the queue. The review is pretty straightforward. If you look at the application, you have to have a minimum $300,000 spend in Ohio. So not on the project, but in Ohio. And the eligible expenses are wages and benefits and the money that you've spent in Ohio, and it's a 30% tax credit. The credit is both refundable and beginning this year, transferable, which some people are using as an assist to their financing, and we look at what folks are looking for in eligible spend. We review the application, and a project gets an award letter. The project doesn't get the actual tax credit until the project is finished. Absolutely and completely finished. And this has been really, this is all in our legislation, but it's really important to us because it's about creating that industry. It's about creating that consistent need for work, for artistry, for everything that comes along with having an actual industry, as opposed to getting in and getting out of the game. Ohio has had a tax credit, motion picture tax credit program since 2009, and I think it was John who said at the beginning that this takes time and patience and perseverance. So in 2009, the program came in, and just because our fiscal years operate funny, that's 2010 by state calculation, and the program had $10 million in tax credits. That was the budget. $6 million was awarded, and only $4.7 million actually used. You don't have to remember those numbers, but I want you to have the perspective of where we are today, okay? So 10 million available, 6 million asked for, almost 5, not quite 5 million used on 6 projects. Today, because we're finishing up the 2017 fiscal year this month, we had $40 million available. We anticipate that we will have used the whole $40 million at the end. The projects aren't all finished yet. That money's available to them until they finish the project. So $40 million available, $40 million used, 35 projects. So 10 million, 6 projects, 40 million, 35 projects. It's been over that time, and long time, short time, kind of, it probably depends on how old you are, but that's some tremendous growth. But you got to get started, and you got to get seated, and every piece of this has to grow too. So that's why, you know, in the state's role, we feel it's really important to work with everybody who's doing this on the local level, and folks like John have been a great partner in making it easy for us to make sure that we're communicating about this effectively and the importance that it has in terms of economic development. But we also like that Columbus does not forget the artistic aspect, because again, you know, we have historic preservation, we have Tourism Ohio. We know we need to bring people here for the long term, and then we want your industries to survive and flourish because we want you to create those jobs for the long term. So I promised you that I was going to tell you what's ahead, and it is going to be an exciting year because okay, 35, that's the number, right? That's from the year that we're finishing now that you want to keep in mind. In the year going ahead, we have $40 million also. That $40 million is going to go fast, and it's going to go more than once. And I tell you this because all year long we were fielding calls from people who are like, here, you're out of money. Here, you're out of money. And we sort of were, in that we had allocated the full $40 million for the first time by about November 1st. But projects cancel, projects drop out, projects postpone. I mean, there are a lot of things that happen in the whole process. We were at capacity 5 times, because when a project drops out, then that becomes part of our budget again, and it's available again. We will hold the tax credit amount we've set aside for a project until the project is completed or canceled, and if it's canceled, then it comes back and becomes available again in that fiscal year. So we have the $40 million. The fiscal year starts July 1st. We currently have 33. I'm a words person, not a numbers person, so I got to use my notes here. We have 33 projects in queue right now. That's waiting for that first come, first serve basis. Next week, our tax credit folks will begin reviewing the applications, those 33 applications, first come, first serve basis, till they get to the 40 million. And then it just holds there in queue. Well, I shouldn't say a large number because I don't have a number for you, but a lot tell us they want to film in July. So folks are getting ready to get started, and that's good. Of those 33 in queue, 15 are small, what we would say small projects. That's under $1 million in tax credits. 15 are in the $1 to $5 million range. And there are 3 large projects over $5 million. Okay, so that's what's in queue. I tried to do a breakout for you of like where they are in the state, but the fact of the matter is, when they apply, they give us a location. They are not tied to that location. So it's not really indicative, and we really don't know until they get here. The local folks have a much better idea of that and who they're working with. So they could wind up anywhere in the state. And this is really important because you should know, I mean, I think sometimes it gets lost on people the hard work that the film commissions do, but film commissions are in touch with us all the time. And we are a public agency and we provide the public record. So the Film Commission is always in touch with us saying like, all right, what have you got? Let me see a copy of the application and so on. Because then they can be in touch with the production company. They know what they're talking about in terms of the film, who the major players would be, how much money it'll be, will be spent on it and so on. And some of the upcoming projects for this year, beginning July 1st, include top talent on their applications, such as Cate Blanchett and Sylvester Stallone, Alec Baldwin, Russell Crowe, Kevin Costner. The projects are going to be great no matter what, because Columbus has become, Ohio has become, we have become very, very competitive. When we look across, I mentioned at the beginning 30 states, we're not competing with 30 states. It becomes really apparent really quickly to the filmmakers because they tell us this, and not because they have to. They just tell us that they have great experiences here. And you see some of them coming back. And we have people who, we have a cinematographer who bought a home in Cincinnati after doing a film there. I mean, people are really starting to put down roots. The Ohio Film Group, businesses are starting to grow and have a lot of work, and not only grow within themselves, but expand what they're doing, as John talked about earlier with the Ohio Film Group. So this is really exciting to us as a state, and certainly I know it is exciting to Columbus as well. But we are becoming a premier film destination, and we hear that from the people who make it. And we hear it when they call us to talk about what they can do with their application and what they can do to be stronger and what they can do to work with Ohio companies, frankly. And, is there some benefit in it to them? Absolutely. But they also know that, outside of New York and California, which have kind of their own thing, they know that this is a place where people are getting work done and having great experiences and finding great crew, and things are growing and things are happening, and there are very dedicated, committed people to making it grow. So when they talk about film now, and this wasn't the case when I came to the agency just a handful of years ago, they would talk about a lot of other states, but they weren't necessarily talking about Ohio. Today, the calls are saying, what do I do to get into Ohio? And as I say, some states have dropped out. Louisiana, which had a really, they kind of like unleashed the world on it, and now they're in some difficulty because of it, and so the program is in a precarious position. A lot of people are going to Georgia, which has a robust program, but people aren't necessarily finding in Georgia the kind of workforce like you find in Ohio. They're not finding the texture, that Midwestern texture in the towns and the cities that they're looking for, and they are finding it here in Ohio. Because really, whatever you're looking for, Ohio, find it here. We've got what they need, and they've really started to notice, and we think we're really in the sweet spot of getting a volume of projects because, from the $10 million that brought 6 projects, here we are. Last year, 35 projects, and this year, what looks to be more. So there's the outlook, and I'm available for any questions that I may or may not know the answers to.
Yeah, we'll open it up for like 1 or 2 questions. If you do have a question, let me hand you the mic because we're recording. Are there any questions for Lyn? If you're thinking, Jenny, I see you have a question. Real quick, I want to talk about when you were talking about people that come and have a great experience here. Chris Hamill can attest to this. We've had several producers, directors come into town, and they love it here when they come in and they want to come back. Heather Olt and Sarah Cheney are here scouting right now. I don't know if raise your hands. So they want to shoot this fall. So
Hi, you
they're-
guys. We've been like pen pals or something.
Yeah. So there you go.
Good to put a face to it.
Jenny, here.
Yeah, John and I both have questions, but they might be the same. I'm just curious how the $40 million credit budget is determined or allocated every year.
First come, first serve.
I mean, the state determines how much they're going to allocate, and so how do they figure that out?
It's actually a legislative decision. So we prepare a budget, our agency does, and then the legislators hash it out and decide if they like what we've prepared or not. And
So it seems healthy, like it's going to keep steady or keep growing?
It's hard for me to say because that's really a legislative decision. We think this is healthy.
Yes, hold on.
So you think it's healthy? Where does that rank? So there's 30 states. That means 20 states have 0 and some are dropping off. Where do we rank?
Yeah, I don't have a rank for you. There's a lot of trick to it. So Georgia has no, am I right about that, John? Georgia?
No cap.
No, yeah, no budget.
They-
Right. So no limit, no budget.
right.
And I told you about Louisiana a minute ago. No limit, no budget. Now here's the problem. Louisiana as a state is in dire straits. They have put out more tax credits than they can afford. They're in the process of buying back their own tax credits at pennies on the dollar, and they're trying to put more scrutiny to the projects that they do. Think about your own household. It would be cool if you had no budget, right? But someday you have to pay the piper. So, no budget is like a credit card. Tax credits are like a credit card. You can spend all day like it's not real money, but someday the credit card company is going to come to be paid. And so, we have to be mindful of that because, again, remember the bigger role of our job in economic development is to make sure that the state is healthy. And Ohio has a balanced budget amendment, which is a wonderful thing. It makes us all live within our means. And so, it's good to know what your limits are so that the day doesn't come that you've built studios and jobs for people and all that, and then it's all gone, like some of those other states I mentioned that just cut it out. Others are debating their numbers. So, we talked a little bit about what numbers I could bring today from other states, but we just don't know. Other states are in the same situation we are right now in their budget process, and they're talking about cutting or eliminating their motion picture tax credit and funding for it. I will tell you that, our budget right now, we will have a balanced budget by June 30th, and nobody has threatened to cut that $40 million. It wasn't in the House version, it wasn't in the Senate version, so I think we feel that's good.
Yeah, everything that I've heard is it's safe. So, Jenny, to speak to your question real quick, last year the House and the Senate bill, one was they were asking for $75 million, the other was $80 million. They gave 40. So we're constantly talking to legislators, representatives about trying to get that raised a little bit. So we're working on it. One more quick question.
In the discussion about possibly raising our own ceiling on the amount of money that we have available for film production in the state. The argument is that you have states like Louisiana, New Mexico, North Carolina that lost their Michigan that have dropped their tax credits because they've lost money. So I guess what I'm asking is, with the $40 million now, do we have room to raise that up? And if we raise it up, will the state still make money based on the model that we have now? Have we been making money, and is there potential to make more?
Okay, so a couple questions. First of all, have we been making money? I take that as economic impact. We are not, part of our requirements, and we execute what the legislature's given us, they do not require us to do an economic impact, any kind of economic impact tracking. So we do, we track jobs. The majority of jobs, direct jobs, are extras, I'll say, grips, So in terms of full-time jobs, we haven't quite seen that happening in a big way yet, but it is happening along the supply chain, Ohio Film Group and so on. I don't have any exact numbers because we don't track the economic impact. We follow the legislation that we've been given. So that's kind of the answer to the first question. So the second part I kind of take as, what would the return on investment be? Remember, any growth has to come from somewhere, and that's really up to the legislature to decide how that part of it works. We do work hard to provide a lot of extra value through some of the other things that we have done. So the investment that as an example, I'll say Cincinnati, the investment that the city of Cincinnati has made in their economic development and the rejuvenation of that over the Rhine area there, if anybody's familiar with it. It's given that turn of the century feel that allows people to go and film there. So that kind of investment is not included in this number, but it certainly is significant, and it has drawn a lot of projects because of the texture of it. And we really see Columbus as having some great opportunities with a different kind of vibe, but all the development that's going on in Columbus that's giving it a very cool and modern vibe, we think is going to be very attractive. And the surrounding area, we know that there's interest in, because here, people have told us they can find, again, everything that they can find: a farm field, they can find a city, they can find that small town look, they can find a lot of things filmmakers can. So we really believe that so many of Ohio's attributes are really what's a big draw. I would be misrepresenting the situation to say that we're getting the fall off from Louisiana's troubles. When Michigan ended their tax credit, we got a handful of films right away because they were ready to go and they weren't going to stay there, so they came across the line. But in the big picture, that's not what we're seeing. And we hear from the people in California that, you know what, sure, they've got, is it 800 million, John, in California? Something crazy.
I
big.
don't know what it is yet.
Except you got to get in a lottery, you got to meet all these qualifications, you have to have done certain things before. And so, I mean, people call us and they say, it's not even, it's too complicated. It's not even worth it. So we think there are other things that are drawing people. And again, it's not a dollar for dollar. 6 projects out of $10 million and 35 out of 40, it's not a dollar for dollar thing on projects.
Yeah, real quick, speaking about California, firsthand knowledge that people are coming from California to film here because, like you said, it's too much of a hassle, and they would rather come here, hire crew, and then deal with the tax credit in California. I've heard it several times.
The simplicity of it is a big advantage, and that's why, the simplicity we know is a big advantage. We hear about it.
All right, thank you, Lyn. How about a round of applause for Lyn? We're going to take just a really quick 5-minute break while Jennifer Lang gets the panel together for film funding and everybody takes their seat. So like 5 minutes.